Amara Matthews traced her fingers over the fabric swatches spread across her tiny apartment desk, the yellow lamplight casting long shadows as evening descended on Oak Ridge. Outside, the sleepy town was already settling in for the night, but inside, her mind raced with visions of runways and elegant silhouettes. Her sketchbook overflowed with designs that had kept her awake for weeks. Designs she believed could one day transform lives. The bell above her door jingled as Adrian walked in without knocking. He was handsome in that small-town way, the son of the local bank manager, with perfectly combed hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Their 3-year relationship had once felt like her anchor, but lately it seemed more like a chain. "Still playing with your little drawings?" he asked, dropping a kiss on her head that felt more dismissive than affectionate. He picked up one of her Skitiza gown, inspired by the water lilies in the town pond, with intricate beadwork she'd spent days perfecting. "It's not playing," Amara said quietly, taking the sketch back. "I've been invited to interview for the apprenticeship at Valori in New York." Her heart raced, saying it aloud. She'd kept the news close for days, afraid of his reaction. Adrian's laugh cut through her excitement like glass. "An apprenticeship? In New York, Amara? Be realistic. You're a girl with sketches from Oak Ridge, not some fashion prodigy. Those spots go to people with connections, with experience." "But they liked my portfolio. I specifically wrote they—" "Send those letters to everyone," he interrupted, his voice softening in that patronizing way she'd grown to recognize. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "I'm saying this because I care about you. I don't want to see you get hurt when reality doesn't match your fantasies." Something broke inside Amara that evening, not just her heart, but the fragile thread that had kept her tethered to a life too small for her dreams. When Adrian left, promising to pick her up for dinner at his parents' house the following night, she didn't tell him she wouldn't be there. By morning, her few possessions were packed. She left a note for her mother, another for Adrian, and bought a one-way bus ticket to New York with nearly all her savings. As Oak Ridge disappeared behind her, tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of liberation. The girl with sketches was gone. In her place sat a woman determined to become everything they said she couldn't be. The early days in New York tested everything Amara thought she knew about herself. The Valori apprenticeship was brutal 16-hour days of coffee runs, pinpricks on her fingers from endless hand-stitching, nights spent sleeping on a pull-out couch in a cramped Brooklyn apartment shared with 3 other aspiring designers. Her mentor, the legendary Eloise Valori, was exacting to the point of cruelty. Ripping apart designs Amara had spent weeks perfecting. "If you want to be exceptional," Eloise would say, her French accent thickening with intensity, "must first understand how mediocre you are." 6 months in, half the apprentices had quit. Amara stayed, swallowing her tears and redesigning collections until her hands cramped. She learned to see fabric the way Eloise did, not as material, but as possibility. She absorbed color theory, construction techniques, and the business acumen that separated successful designers from talented failures. When her roommates went out to clubs, Amara stayed in, sketching. When they took holidays, she volunteered for extra work. The pain of Adrian's dismissal fueled her on nights when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her resolve. Her first small breakthrough came during Milan Fashion Week, when Eloise fell ill, and Amara was tasked with making last-minute alterations to a gown for a prominent actress. Her suggestions cascading crystal beadwork, inspired by those Oak Ridge. Waterlilla earned her first nod of approval from Eloise. "You have an eye," the woman conceded. Perhaps not entirely hopeless. Coming from Eloise, it was practically a standing ovation. 3 years into her apprenticeship, Amara presented her first independent collection to Valoria's creative board. The line modern silhouettes with unexpected romantic elements that honored her. Small-town roots while speaking to cosmopolitan sensibilities received cautious approval for limited production. When the collection sold out within weeks, Eloise called Amara to her office. Instead of congratulations, she handed her a business card. "Marcus Reed, financial investor. He's looking for emerging talent to back. Don't make me regret recommending you." Amara stared at the card, her hand trembling slightly. "You want me?" To leave Valerie's smile was rare and genuine. "Little bird, the nest is too small for your wings now." That night, Amara cried for the first time in years, not from sadness or exhaustion, but from the realization that her impossible dream was becoming possible after all. The Amara Matthews label. Launched with a whisper rather than a roaring. Intimate showing in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, with just 30 carefully selected guests. Marcus Reed's investment had been modest but strategic, focused on quality over immediate expansion. What Amara lacked in budget, she made up for in vision. Her debut collection embodied transformation pieces that could be styled multiple ways. Fabrics that shifted subtly in different lights, silhouettes that celebrated rather than constrained. Fashion writers noted her refreshing perspective, calling her a voice of authentic femininity in an industry of manufactured glamour. The collection caught the attention of Zara Evans, a rising actress known for her discerning taste. Wore an Amara Matthews gown to the Cannes Film Festival. The photographs went viral, not just for the actress's beauty, but for the breathtaking design that seemed to capture movement and stillness. Orders flooded in faster than Amara's small team could fulfill them. Marcus secured additional funding, allowing her to expand into a proper atelier in Manhattan's garment district. Her team grew from 3 to 15, then 30. Celebrities and socialites began requesting custom pieces, drawn to both the artistry and the woman behind it. Through it all, Amara maintained her vision, creating designs that made women feel simultaneously powerful and beautiful. She never forgot the feeling of being diminished, of having her dreams mocked. Each collection she created was, in some way, an answer to Adrian's laughter. 5 years after leaving Oak Ridge, Amara stood backstage at Paris Fashion Week, watching her models line up in creations that had once existed only in her imagination. The collection, her most personal yet, was inspired by transformation and resilience. Featuring subtle nods to her journey, linings printed with tiny sketches, a color palette drawn from Oak Ridge's landscapes, embroidery reminiscent of bus ticket patterns as she peered through the curtain at the assembled fashion elite. She spotted Eloise Valory in the front row. The woman caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Moments before the show began, Amara's assistant handed her a phone. "It's Marcus," she whispered. "He says it's important." Marcus's voice was breathless with excitement. "Amara, Lydia Winters wants to meet. She's considering you for creative director of her entire house." Lydia Winters, the fashion matriarch whose empire spanned continents, whose approval could cement a legacy. Amara closed her eyes, steadying herself against the rushing memories of a small desk in a small town, and a man who couldn't see beyond its borders. "Tell her I'd be honored," she said, her voice steady as the music began and her new world prepared to unfold on the runway. The Metropolitan Museum's annual charity gala had transformed its grand hall into a shimmering wonderland, the crystalline sculptures catching light from cascading chandeliers. New York's elite moved through the space in a choreographed dance of wealth and influence, air kisses exchanged between rivals. Champagne flutes perpetually refilled by silent servers. Amara had attended as a guest in previous years, but tonight was different. Tonight, she was being honored. Her innovative approach to sustainable luxury had earned her the Visionary Award. Her designs featured in the museum's special exhibition. Her name appeared on banners alongside fashion legends in a quiet moment. Before the ceremony, she stood alone in the exhibition hall, gazing at her work displayed on illuminated mannequins. Her journey from sketches on a small desk to the Metropolitan Museum still seemed surreal. Running her fingers along the glass barrier, she thought of all the moments she'd nearly given up, all the times rejection had nearly broken her resolve. "Ms. Matthews," a warm voice interrupted her reverie. She turned to find Julian Vega, the renowned architect whose sustainable structures had revolutionized urban development. They had corresponded professionally, but never met. In person, his presence was commanding yet gentle, his eyes reflecting genuine admiration. "Your work is extraordinary," he said, gesturing to her exhibition. "The way you've integrated traditional techniques with innovation, it's like you've created a conversation between past and future." Something in his sincere appreciation reminded her of the passion she'd once tried to share with Adriana and how differently this man received it. They spoke easily, comparing creative processes, laughing over shared experiences of artistic frustration. When he asked about her inspiration, she found herself sharing stories of Oak Ridge she hadn't recalled in years. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation over dinner sometime," suggested as they were called back to the main hall. The warmth in his eyes held promise without pressure. As they returned to the gala, Mara was momentarily distracted by a familiar profile near the ab. Bar a face she hadn't seen in 8 years, but would recognize anywhere. Adrian stood awkwardly in a rental tuxedo, clutching a champagne flute, looking simultaneously impressed and out of place. Julian noticed her hesitation. "Is everything all right?" Amara nodded, a strange calm settling over her. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "Everything is exactly as it should be." Later, as she accepted her award to thunderous applause, she caught Adrian's eye in the crowd. For a moment, she was transported back to that yellow-lit room and his dismissive laugh, not his gaze for a heartbeat, not with anger or triumph, but with the serene recognition that their paths had diverged exactly as they needed to. Then she turned away, toward Julian's encouraging smile, toward her future leaving the past where it belonged. The invitation to give the commencement address at Oak Ridge Community College arrived on embossed paper with the school's modest seal. Amara traced the lettering with her finger, memories washing over her at the classroom where she'd first learned to sew. The teacher who'd encouraged her to apply for that life-changing apprenticeship. "You don't have to accept," Julian said gently, bringing her tea as she sat in their sun-drenched Manhattan loft. After 2 years together, he knew her story, understood the complicated emotions Oak Ridge evoked. "I think I do," she replied. "Myself, and maybe for someone else who needs to hear it." Returning to Oak Ridge was surreal. The town seemed simultaneously unchanged and impossibly small. Faces she'd known turned to watch her sleek car pass, whispers following in her wake. Her mother now living comfortably in the home Amara had purchased for her, embraced her with tears of pride. The night before the commencement, Mara visited her old apartment building on a quiet walk. Standing outside, she remembered the girl who had once believed her sketches could change her life despite everyone's doubts. "They said you were back." Adrian's voice hadn't changed. He stood a few feet away, his once perfect hair now thinning, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. The local bank where he'd followed his father now struggled against national chains. She'd heard he'd never left Oak Ridge. "Just for the weekend," she replied, her voice steady. An awkward silence stretched between them. 8 years of divergent paths impossible to bridge with small talk. "Was wrong," he finally said, looking past her rather than at her. "About you, about what you could become." Amara felt the last piece of something old and painful finally release inside her. "It was never about proving you wrong, Adrian. It was about proving myself right." She left him standing there, walking back toward her mother's home where Julian waited. The next day, she stood before Oak Ridge's graduating class. Sunlight streaming through the gymnasium windows as she spoke. "The most powerful words in any language," she told them, "are 'I believe in you.' If you're fortunate, others will say these words when you need them most. But the truth is, the only person who must absolutely, unwaveringly believe in you. You." From the podium, she could see her mother and Julian in the front row. In the back, half hidden, stood Adrian. "When I left Oak Ridge, I carried 2 things, my sketches and my conviction that they mattered. Both were equally important. Talent without conviction withers. Conviction without talent struggles. But together, they can create a life beyond what anyone, including yourself, might have imagined possible." After the ceremony, a young girl approached her, shyly extending a sketchbook filled with designs. "I'm afraid they're not very good," she whispered. Amara knelt to meet her eyes, taking the sketchbook with the reverence it deserved. "The question isn't whether they're good enough for others," she said, carefully turning the pages. "It's whether they set your soul on fire when you create them." The girl nodded, eyes wide. "They do." "Then they're perfect," Amara said, returning the book, "and so are you." As she and Julian drove away from Oak Ridge that evening, Amara watched the town recede in her rearview mirror. This time, there were no tears, only gratitude for the journey. The struggles that had shaped her, and the knowledge that somewhere, in that small town, perhaps another dreamer was gathering the courage to follow their own, impossible path. The woman everyone once doubted had become the woman everyone now admired. But more importantly, she had become exactly who she had always believed she could be.